The silence after goodbye. The morning light filtered gently through the curtains, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Daniel stirred awake, expecting to hear Anna humming from the kitchen like she always did. But the house was quiet, too quiet. He turned over and reached across the bed. Empty, cold sheets. His heart sank. She had left early, rushing to work after a brief kiss on his forehead. "Love you," she'd whispered. Those were her last words. He didn't know then that a driver would run a red light, that she would never come home, and that silence would move in to stay. The call came at 10:47 a.m. Daniel was folding laundry, absent-mindedly matching socks, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He nearly didn't answer. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. A police officer, an accident, critical condition, Mercy General. The world slowed, words blurred. He dropped everything and ran out the door. Traffic lights meant nothing. By the time he reached the hospital, it was too late. A nurse met him in the hallway, her eyes downcast. "We did everything we could." Just like that, Anna was gone, and the silence began. He came home to her coffee mug still on the table, lipstick mark faint but visible. The book she'd been reading, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, lay half open, spine bent. Her coat still hung by the door. Daniel stood in the hallway for minutes, afraid to move. If he touched anything, it would feel real. The seat at the kitchen counter where she always sat was painfully empty. He sat opposite it and stared. In his mind, she was still talking, telling him about her day, her co-workers, what she'd cook for dinner. But the only response was silence. Rain fell steadily, soft and cold. Umbrellas dotted the cemetery like black flowers. Daniel stood stiffly, hands trembling, face unreadable. He couldn't cry. Not yet. His body hadn't caught up to the grief. People hugged him, spoke words that meant nothing. She was so kind. She's in a better place. Time will heal. He nodded, thanked them. When they lowered the casket, he didn't look away. It was the last real thing he could do for her. Afterward, the house was waiting, dark, still. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. That was when he began to fall. He searched for her voice, voicemails, videos, wedding clips, anything that still held her. He found an old recording from their anniversary trip, her laughter mixing with ocean waves. He played it again and again. Sometimes in the middle of the night, he thought he heard her call his name. Once, he answered, but it was just the wind pressing against the windows. He left a glass of water on her nightstand, as if she might come back thirsty. He couldn't delete her number. He texted her, "I miss you." The message turned green, undelivered, even her silence hurt. He began writing letters. "Dear Anna," they all began. He wrote in the mornings with coffee gone cold. He wrote at night, when loneliness pressed down like a blanket. He told her everything, what the neighbors said, how her roses were blooming, what he ate, what he couldn't eat anymore. He never mailed them. He kept them in a shoebox in her closet. It became a ritual. Write, cry, breathe. As if through these letters he could reach her. As if words might build a bridge across the silence. But no reply ever came. Only the ticking of the clock. He wandered into the grocery store one day, trying to remember what food even was. Everything reminded him of her. The cereal she loved, the tea she drank, the shampoo she liked. He stood in the pasta aisle for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. A woman asked if he was okay. He smiled weakly and said, "Just forgot what I came for." He bought nothing. When he got home, he sat in the driveway and sobbed. It wasn't just the groceries. It was the fact he no longer knew how to live without her. She came to him in a dream. They were in their old apartment, sitting on the balcony, feet dangling off the edge. She smiled at him, peaceful. "I'm okay," she whispered. He reached for her hand but couldn't feel it. When he woke, the room was bathed in morning light. For a moment, he believed she was still beside him. Then he saw the untouched pillow. The dream had felt too real, too cruel. It wasn't comfort, it was torture. Even sleep betrayed him now. She was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Weeks passed, maybe months. Time didn't make sense anymore. One afternoon, a video popped up on his phone, an old one, of Anna trying to cook and burning everything. She had flour in her hair and sauce on her shirt, and she was laughing hysterically. Daniel laughed too, out loud, then froze. The sound startled him. It felt foreign, disloyal. How could he laugh if she was gone? He turned off the video, but that laugh stayed with him, the tiniest crack in the silence. Grief was still there, but so was love, still warm. He found it by accident, buried deep in his phone under old recordings. Her voice. "Hey babe, just wanted to say I love you. Don't forget to feed the cat and come home soon, okay?" He dropped the phone. Her voice was so alive, so near. He played it again, then again. The message ended with a laugh. That laugh, it was like hearing her ghost. He cried harder than he had at the funeral. For a moment, it was almost enough. Almost. But then the message ended, and the silence rushed back in. He couldn't bring himself to pack her things. Her scarves still hung by the door. Her books filled every shelf. Her favorite mug sat in the sink, untouched. Friends gently suggested he clean up. He nodded, promised he would. But he couldn't. Every object felt sacred, like touching them would erase her. So he let them be. The house remained a museum of her, unchanged, untouched, as if time had frozen the moment she left. And in a way, it had. Daniel lived among memories, and memories didn't move on. One rainy afternoon, he opened their old photo album. Each page a frozen moment, their wedding, their honeymoon in Greece, lazy Sundays in pajamas. He touched her face in the photos, trying to remember the exact feel of her skin. In one picture, she was laughing with her eyes closed, head tilted back. He remembered that moment clearly. They had no idea then how short forever would be. He closed the album and held it to his chest. Memories didn't fade, they echoed. And sometimes they hurt more than forgetting ever could. He tried cooking again. Her favorite, chicken soup with extra garlic. The kitchen felt too large, the silence too loud. He set the table for one, then stared at the second plate before putting it away. Every bite was a struggle. She used to hum while they ate. Now he heard only the clink of the spoon. Halfway through, he stopped. Tears fell into the bowl. He left the dishes untouched, the soup growing cold. Some meals, he realized, weren't meant to be finished. Not when the person you cooked them for was never coming back. She had wanted a cat for years. 2 months before the accident, they adopted a black and white one named Molly. After Anna died, Daniel barely noticed her, just a shadow slipping through rooms. But Molly never left his side. At night, she curled beside him. During his darkest moments, she pawed gently at his chest, as if to say, "Breathe." He began talking to her like a person. She didn't answer, but she listened, and somehow that helped. Anna had wanted him to love something if she couldn't be there. Molly was a part of her, a soft, purring memory. He stopped looking in the mirror. The man staring back wasn't him. Sunken eyes, graying beard, always tired. He used to care about his clothes, his hair. Now, it all seemed pointless. Anna once joked that he looked like a lost poet when he didn't shave. He looked like that now, lost. One day he stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "I miss you." The reflection didn't answer, but in his heart he imagined her voice saying, "I know." And for a moment, he let the silence hold him instead of fighting it. He found her journal in the nightstand drawer. He hesitated, hand resting on the worn leather cover. Reading it felt wrong, but not reading it felt worse. He opened to a random page. "Daniel doesn't realize how deeply I love him. Every day with him feels like a gift." He stopped. His hands trembled. Every word was a secret she never got to say out loud. Page after page of love, dreams, worries. No sign she ever imagined it would end so soon. He closed it gently. It was like hearing her heart beat again. Their third wedding anniversary came. He bought flowers out of habit more than hope. He placed them on her side of the bed, then sat and waited. He spoke aloud, telling her about the sky, about the neighbor's new dog, about how hard mornings were without her. No response. Just the hum of the heater. Still, he kept talking. It was the closest he came to feeling her presence. At midnight, he whispered, "Happy anniversary, Anna." And in the silence that followed, he imagined her smiling. It took months, but he finally called the number his friend gave him. Dr. Patel, a kind voice, patient eyes. He didn't say much the first session, just cried. Dr. Patel told him, "Grief isn't a wound you close. It's a place you learn to walk through." He didn't know what that meant at the time, but he kept coming back. He talked about Anna, about the accident, about guilt and the fear of forgetting. Some weeks it helped, some weeks it hurt more. But for the first time, he wasn't grieving alone. One morning, he sat down to write his usual letter to Anna and couldn't. Not because the pain was gone, but because he didn't know what else to say. He stared at the blank page, then whispered, "Maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow." It felt okay, like maybe her silence didn't mean she was gone. Just listening, somewhere. He tucked the empty page into the box with the others. It wasn't goodbye, it was space. A pause in a lifelong conversation. At a cafe downtown, he bumped into a woman and spilled her coffee. She laughed. "Well, that's one way to say hello." They chatted briefly. She liked poetry, taught literature. He found himself smiling. Not the smile, but something small, gentle. He apologized again. She shrugged. "It's just coffee." He walked home thinking of Anna. Would she be upset? He decided no. She would have told him, "It's okay to smile." That night, he wrote her one more letter. "Told you I met someone. Don't worry, I'm still yours. But maybe I don't have to be only yours forever." Music had been unbearable. Every song was a memory. But one morning, he played their favorite album. Slowly, carefully. The first few notes broke him, but he kept listening. As the song played, he remembered dancing with her barefoot in the kitchen, candles flickering nearby. He closed his eyes and swayed alone. It was painful, but also beautiful. Because grief, he realized, wasn't the absence of love. It was its echo. And echoes mean something once lived. He wrote a letter, not to Anna, but to himself, a future version. It read, "You survived. You still love her. That hasn't changed. But you laughed again. You walked into the sunlight. And that doesn't mean you've left her behind. It means you're carrying her forward." He sealed it and dated it for a year from now. He didn't know if he'd feel any different then. But writing it was hope, and hope was a start. Spring came. He tended to Anna's roses, pruning gently, watering them as she had. New blooms appeared. He spoke to them softly, pretending she could hear. "Look what you made," he whispered. One flower bloomed brighter than the rest. He smiled through tears. Maybe this was her way of staying. Not in the walls, not in the clothes, but in life, in color, in bloom. He visited the lake they talked about going to, but never did, alone. The cabin was quiet, the water still. He brought her journal, read a page aloud. The wind stirred like a breath. He sat for hours, letting the silence wrap around him. It no longer crushed him. It held him. He looked at the stars that night and whispered, "Thank you for loving me." Somewhere he believed she heard it. On what would have been her 34th birthday, he baked her favorite cake, chocolate with raspberry filling. He lit one candle, then sat and ate a slice, whispering stories to her memory. It wasn't about moving on. It was about remembering right, about celebrating, not just mourning. She had lived, and he would honor that with sweetness, not just sorrow. One evening, he opened the shoebox with all the letters. He read a few, laughed at some, cried over others. Then slowly, he took a lighter and burned the first one. Watched the smoke curl into the sky, not to erase, but to release. The past would always be part of him, but he didn't need to carry all its weight. Some love could live in memory, quietly. He left the window open more often now. Let the wind move through the house. Let birdsong in. Let the world return. The silence was still there, but different, not empty, not cold, just quiet. And sometimes in that quiet, he felt her most, not as a ghost, but as a presence in the life he was building again, not alone, but changed. He didn't forget her. He never would. But he also didn't stop living. He walked into the sunlight. He laughed. He planted new flowers. He held someone's hand without guilt. And some days he still cried. But other days, he didn't. The silence after goodbye had taught him that love doesn't vanish. It lingers, softly, like a familiar song. And every time it played, he smiled. Because in the end, the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with memory, with loss, with love, always love.